Hi everyone, BritSimon here. So I'm hoping that you are interested in entering the lottery for DV2026. And if you haven't already done so, you should go ahead and enter your details at dvprogram.state.gov, which is where the entry happens. Only enter at that site, please. Don't go through any agents. Don't enter at any other site. That's the only place that you should enter. It's the official site. It's free. If you don't go through an agent, there's no chance that you'll be blackmailed later by that agent. Okay, so please do your own entry. Now, some people may be wondering what will be the process of when they will find out whether or not they're a winner, and also what are the chances of being a winner. And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit. So firstly, let's talk about the process. Your entry will happen at some point between the October the 2nd entry date and November the 5th. During that whole period of time, people will be entering their details at various times of day, any day of the week. And there is absolutely no difference at all to your chances of winning based on the time or the day that you enter. It makes no difference whatsoever. It is true that we have more entries. We can see that more entries happen at the beginning of the period and then at the end of the period. But there's no difference in the chance of selection. It's a random draw process. You will then wait until May of next year when they announce the results. The draw is actually going to take place in December. And between December and May, they go through a sort of a filtering process to filter out some of the entries that they believe don't meet certain requirements. Those entries will be entries where the photo doesn't meet the requirements. That's the biggest single reason people are filtered out. And also some people will be filtered out because they have entered fraudulent information, such as multiple entries. And so those will be filtered out during the time period between December and May. Then in May is when they announce the results. If you wonder how the draw actually works, I have explained that before in great detail, but I'll give you a little bit more of a clue here now. Basically, let's just imagine there are 8 million entries in a particular region. Let's take the region of Africa. Let's say there are 8 million entries. What they do is they take every single one of those entries, every one of them, and they jumble up the order, and they mix up the order so that it doesn't matter what, anything about those cases. They're just mixed up in order, and then they number those cases from AF number 1 to AF 8 million. Okay, and it's that numbering, the sequencing process, that is effectively the draw. It's not like they draw out of a hat, but what happens is by assigning a numeric position to each case, starting from number 1 and going to 8 million, they're effectively doing a draw. They will then take the top 100,000 cases or so. They can do a bit more, a bit less, but they'll take the first 100,000 cases, and then they go through and they disqualify or filter out some of those cases. That will leave us probably with something like 25 or 30,000 actual cases, entries, which are the winners. Okay, on those entries, the derivatives are included. So every time you enter, if let's say I enter and I'm a married person with 2 kids, there'll be 4 people on my case, and all of those have the same case number. There's just my case number, and that's to cover everybody on my case, right? And so there will be maybe 25 or 30,000 selected cases from Africa, but that could mean that there would be 50,000 people being selected, essentially selectees. We call them selectees. Okay, so that's how the draw takes place, and I've told you when the draw takes place, but what are your chances of selection? Now, I'm going to do a second part to this video explaining this chance of selection thing in great detail. And I'm going to do that because I've been asked by people who are currently interested in the DV25 program they want to understand things better. But I can say to you that if you're in DV 2026, you probably don't need to go to that level of detail at this point, because you've simply entered a lottery, and the chances of selection are quite low. And so it doesn't make sense to do a lot of planning and a lot of questioning about a process where you may or may not get selected. So let me just give you a sort of a broad sort of idea of how many people are selected. In DV 2024, there are about 140,000 people selected out of about 14 million entries. So roughly speaking, about 1% of the entries were selected. 1% might sound okay, might sound pretty good, but if you think of it in terms of the chance of selection, what it means is you could enter for every year for 100 years and statistically only get selected one time. You have a 1 in 100 year chance of selection in the DV lottery for most regions. Oceania region has a slightly higher, actually quite significantly higher chance of selection. Their chance of selection can be 4 or 5%, or 1 in about 20 years. And so they have a slightly different setup to their draw process. I should also mention that the draws are held separately. Africa has its own draw, EU has its own draw, Asia has its own draw, and so on. Each one of those regions, they're separate from each other. So you've got 6 regions: Africa, Asia, Europe, Oceania, South America, and North America. North America is so small I barely ever talk about it, and so I think of them as being 5 regions. And of those 5, 3 are significantly larger than Oceania and South America in terms of the number of selectees. So there's 3 large regions, and then 2 small regions, and 1 very, very small region, which has maybe 20 selectees in most years. The other thing to note is that they overselect every year. They always do this. So I mentioned DV 2024 had 140,000. I think it was about 143,000 people were selected. In DV 2025, at least 131,000 have been selected. Actually, the number will be slightly higher than that. But we're talking about 140,000 or 130,000 people selected, and there's only 55,000 visas. And those 55,000 visas also count the derivatives. So again, back to my example, if I'm married and I have 2 kids, I would take 4 of those 55,000 visas. So there's way too many people selected. Why do they select so many people? Well, some people won't proceed with the application. They simply enter the lottery, they win, and then they never proceed with the application. Some people will proceed with the application, but they'll be denied. They'll be disqualified or denied during the process because they've made mistakes, or they don't meet the requirements, or various reasons. And some people will be set up for interviews, by the way, and never even show up for the interview. So there is various situations that happen. Then there will always be, if they overselect dramatically, if they select something like 140,000 or so, there will always be the situation in that sort of year where some people never even get the chance to have an interview. Their number will be considered too high. So the higher the case number, the more risky your case is. And so really winning the lottery is wonderful, and it's amazing. But if you've got a high case number, it can be very stressful and somewhat of a curse, because you think you're a winner. You might run around the village you live in and tell all of your friends and your family that you've won the green card lottery and you're moving to America next week, and nothing of the sort will happen. And in fact, you might have a case number that's so high that you never get an interview, and you'll be left with a feeling of embarrassment and sadness. So it can be quite an emotional toll, and I want to prepare people for that because at every chance, because a lot of people are feeling let down during the process, right? For a lot of people, it works wonderfully, but there are a significant number of people that it won't work for. So you may as well know that right from the beginning as you're doing your entry. Okay, so remember, it is a lottery, it's not a plan. Your chance of selection is entirely random. There's absolutely nothing that you can do that makes a difference to your chance of selection, although you can significantly improve your chance of being approved by having a good quality photograph, making sure you include all of your derivatives, following all the instructions carefully, making sure you do your entry correctly. There are things that you can do, and of course, enter. You get 100% boost in your chances if you enter, as opposed to not entering. Okay, so that being said, I think you understand the timeline now for when you would find out if you're a winner. It's probably also important to note that for DV2026, the timeline is you're entering now in October and November. You find out if you're a winner in May. In October of 2025 would be the very first interviews for that year, and interviews will be spread out for the following 12 months up to September 30th of 2026. So it's quite a long process, quite a long period of time before your entry that you're doing now could possibly get you a green card, even if you are selected as a winner. Okay. Good. That's probably about all I wanted to explain to you. And I'm going to do a part 2 to this video to explain a little bit more about how the chances of selection work and how there's certain sort of anomalies in the process in terms of case numbers and selected countries, etc. But really, for most of you who are in DV 2026, you don't need that information to participate in the lottery, so only watch that second part of the video if you're a DV25 winner or you're particularly interested in the internal workings of the lottery. All right, everybody, have a great day then. Bye-bye.